defecting from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressive Congress, a federal high court in Abuja says Ebonyi State Governor Umahi and his deputy Kelechi Igwe must vacate their seats. 16 members of the Ebonyi House of Assembly who defected to the APC with the governor have been ordered to vacate their seats. Arise correspondent Mary Chinda reports.
Exactly a month ago, a federal high court sitting in Gusau, Zamfara State, struck out a suit seeking to remove Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawale from office for defecting from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. Today, a federal high court sitting in Abuja, though a court of coordinate jurisdiction, orders the Ebonyi State Governor and his deputy to vacate their seats for defecting from the PDP to the APC.
This is a very epochal judgment. It has settled an issue that has been thorny in Nigeria's constitutional law over the years. So many people believe that when a governor defects, that there is no constitutional effect. But this judgment has been able to show that in fact it has the same consequences as a member of the House of Assembly defecting.
It is a tale of same legal issue and same court, but two different rulings.
There is no provision against the defection of the president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. So, is the court making a judgment different from that of the Supreme Court? It is obvious. All the issues we raised were carpeted, and that of the plaintiff hyperboled, given this type of judgment. Of course, it goes to no issue. We're certainly going to appeal.
While the court in Zamfara held that it lacked the jurisdiction to entertain the suit, the one sitting in Abuja assumed jurisdiction. Justice Bapa Aliyu of the Federal High Court, Gusau, was of the view that the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria did not prohibit a governor from defecting from a party. He also held that both the APC and the PDP constitutions did not make it unlawful for a governor to decide and defect to any other constitutionally recognized political party operating within the country. However, Justice Ian Ekwo of the Federal High Court saw things differently. He held that the votes cast for the PDP in the March 9, 2019 governorship election and those for the House of Assembly were not transferable to the APC that failed in the election.
The House, defection is handled in the House. You table it before the Speaker. So, there is no evidence that this matter of defection of the House members were ever tabled before the House of Assembly. That is the provision of the Constitution.
The court held that in Nigeria, political parties canvass for votes and they are voted for, adding that only candidates sponsored by the winning parties can lawfully claim such votes. In the instant case, Justice Ekwo said that it was the PDP that the people of Ebonyi State voted for and that it is the party's candidate that can claim the votes. While calling on the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to stop recognizing Umahi and his deputy as governor and deputy governor respectively, the judge ordered that all monies collected from the period of defection to the judgment date must be recovered from them. An Ebonyi State High Court sitting in Abakaliki had on February 28th upheld the defection of the governor and his deputy. Given the conflicting judgment from these courts of coordinate jurisdiction, it is obvious that further appeals to the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court are imminent. However, before the Apex Court can have a chance to pronounce on the matter, the affected political office holders will have exhausted their terms. Mary Chinda, Arise News.
However, Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi has declared that he is still in charge despite a federal high court ruling that the governor and his deputy Kelechi Igwe must vacate their elected seats for defecting from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressive Congress. At a press conference in the state capital, Abakaliki, Umahi says the judgment of Justice Ian Ekwo was, quote, purchased.
So there is no constitutional provision for any hatchet man to remove a governor. There are three ways whereby a governor can vacate his seat. It's either by death, resignation, or impeachment by the House of Assembly. There is no any other constitutional provision that empowers a hatchet man to turn the Constitution and the law upside down. I've listened to the judgment of Igwe, and it's very obvious that he was on a mission. He was making all efforts to upturn the rulings of the Supreme Court and Appeal Court on issues like this. We have had the rumors before now that he was determined to give judgment against all known laws and the Constitution, first to embarrass APC, two, to embarrass the federal government. For me, I do not feel worried, but I feel so sorry for the judiciary. The executives may have problems, the legislature may have problems, but the moment justice could be purchased, then we are in trouble in this country. And the ruling this afternoon is a clear evidence that this country is in trouble. And let me tell you that this same judge has over 10 cases against Ebonyi State government with him. And you can imagine what is going to rule. We have petitioned him to NJC, and we will follow it up at all costs to ensure that this man is brought to justice. I want you to disregard the judgment. It is null and void. There is a substituting judgment in Zamfara State, and there is also a judgment in Ebonyi State. So we've chosen the one to obey. We will not obey his ruling. We will obey the ruling of a competent court of equal level that says you cannot sue a governor. The sections of the Constitution are very clear. No civil or criminal proceedings could be brought against a sitting governor. This is not a pre-election matter. This is not a tribunal matter. And so he has murdered justice in this country, and he will be remembered and his generation for this jungle justice, which has nothing, no leg to stand. I'm still the governor of Ebonyi State, and he has no powers to remove me.
Meanwhile, the PDP has nominated Honorable Igwe to replace Umahi, while Fred Odegu has also been nominated as Deputy Governor. Speaking during an emergency press briefing at the party's National Secretariat in Abuja, National Chairman Iyorchia Ayu urged the Independent National Electoral Commission to act with immediate effect based on the court orders.
In a landmark judgment, the court ruled that the votes in any election in Nigeria are to political parties, this is in quote, and not candidates. And in line with the court order, PDP is immediately submitting to INEC the names of our candidates for governor and deputy governor of Ebonyi State respectively. In fact, that already has been done. And in line with the court order, we are also calling on INEC to immediately issue the certificates of return to the PDP nominees as replacement for Mrs. Umahi and Igwe, pursuant to the order of the Honorable Court. Furthermore, we call on the Chief Judge of Ebonyi State to immediately swear them in as soon as INEC issues the requisite certificates of return. And lastly, we call on INEC to immediately withdraw the certificates of return from the 17 lawmakers and commence the process or conducting by-elections to replace them.
A lot to unpack this morning. Tunde?
Yeah, which is why I'm really glad that we have a guest in the person of Chief Robert Clark coming to discuss this issue. But for me, what Governor Umahi said, for me, has always been the received wisdom about how a governor cannot be removed from office unless he dies, unless he resigns, or he's impeached by a majority of the State House of Assembly. And I'm going back now to, I don't even know what we're going to do now if this principle of stare decisis is thrown out of the window, because we have, that means standing by what has already been decided, literally. So the importance of a precedent. We already have Attorney General of the Federation and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the 2007 case, which upheld Alhaji Atiku Abubakar's freedom of association, his constitutional right to freedom of association. At the time, he was dragged to court because as the vice president, he decamped to another party. ACN it was at the time, I believe. Yes, from PDP. So he was dragged to court over that. But the court upheld his right to do so and said that it did not amount to a constructive resignation. So I suppose if we're going by that principle of stare decisis, that would apply to Governor Umahi. His decamping does not amount to a constructive resignation, but the court has found otherwise. I'm not sure of all the facts. I haven't read the entire thing. Maybe the facts are not on all fours, so that principle, which is really sacrosanct, does not quite apply here for whatever reason. But since PDP is not letting the grass grow under their feet, I imagine that beyond an appeal, which is clearly going to have to happen, I imagine that Governor Umahi's lawyer will also try and seek a stay of execution, because it does look like events are moving quite quickly as a result of this judgment.
Brilliant.
Okay. Right. So I get a chance to, see it my own little way. So based on the analysis and what a lot of people are bringing out, they're quoting a couple of sections. Like what David Umahi talked about, the judgment was based on 221, I should think, that, it has to only be political association and political party can get you in. They are talking about 188, section 188, they're talking about section 180. They're also talking about the fact that, and I think one argument Zekomen made in papers this morning, a senior advocate of Nigeria was saying that it is the candidate that owns the live vote. And that's another argument a couple of people are advancing. They're also looking at it vis-a-vis, the case in Zamfara. They're also looking at it vis-a-vis the case in Kogi and the likes, and making all of these arguments. In all of this, they also cited 179, talking about the fact that it is actually the candidate that gets the votes. And they said, okay, what makes up a candidate in a governorship election if he can get more votes than the other person? That the candidate increasingly was mentioned in all of this. So there are many arguments on the table, but one thing is certain in all of this. Even if an appeal is made today, or the process of appeal is started by the stay of execution, like you said, when will the appeal come in? It will definitely be after the tenure of Umahi. When you look at it, and when we see the way the appeal process plays out, Umahi has to leave this time next year, or this time next year, he's no longer governor. So that's another part to it. Will it be justice truly done? Will they get anything from the appeal court? How will the process play out? And what does this mean for our democracy? So those are some of the arguments people are advancing out there.
Okay, what does this mean for our democracy? I think we can start by interrogating that. One of the major problems we have had in Nigerian democracy is cross-carpet. It didn't start today. It started even from the First Republic. You remember that incident in the Western Region House of Assembly and how people cross-carpeted and it became a major issue. But however, our democracy, inquisitive, as anybody may call it, has been evolving over the time. And since the return to democratic rule in 1999, this issue of people leaving one political party to the other has remained a very serious problem. And it has to do with the ideology of politics in Nigeria. But I think we can dimension it. The first part of it is the moral part of it. Okay, in some other jurisdictions, we see people, they lose elections, they don't have the opportunity, they remain within the party. We see in the UK, we see it in the US, where you find somebody cross-carpeting, leaving one political party to the other. There are very unusual instances in other places. So the first thing is that, look, our politics in Nigeria is not based on ideology. It's based on personal interest. And it was something that political analysts have said over the years that we need to address. However, there's a clause in the Electoral Act that says when there's a division within the party, and I imagine that a lot of people can quote that, that you can port, which is the popular phrase in Nigeria, to another political party. But we all should be reminded that that applies only to state houses of assembly and the national legislature. It's not a general rule. So, in terms of morality, the question is, can you win an election on the platform of a particular political party that you ascribe to, that you sign into, and then somewhere down the line, you leave the position and you go to another political party because it is convenient for you to do so? What we're dealing with has been, it seems to me, the failure to test the law. And what this ruling by Justice Inyanga Ekwo has shown is to provide us an opportunity to test the law, a fresh opportunity to test the law. So I think it's a salutary development. I think it's a good development. I think it's an attempt to further interrogate the constitutional order with regard to elections in Nigeria. That's the first point. Now, the other side to it is not moral, it's legal. What does the legal framework say? Now, in his, learned submission, the jurist, Inyanga Ekwo, Justice of the Federal High Court, submitted that under Section 221 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, only a political party can present a candidate for election, and only a political party can solicit for votes. In other words, the candidate is a trustee of the party. So can you hold a position in trust and then transfer it to another political party? This is the main jurisdictional legal issue in this matter, in my view. I may be wrong. And people who have not read the judgment should take a look at the details of the judgment. We cannot make definitive statements on excerpts, but at least it is clear that the judge ruled on the basis of Section 221. Now, having said that, we now have a situation whereby the judge gave specific orders that Governor David Umahi should, and his deputy and 17 members of the House of Assembly who cross-carpeted are no longer valid members of the positions they held because they betrayed the trust that was reposed on them. Two, the learned jurist also said that, look, a fresh election should be ordered and that the PDP should present new candidates for an election. It was very clear in that regard. And he also made a point that INEC should stop recognizing Umahi, Dave Umahi and his deputy and the affected 17 members of the State House of Assembly as validly elected members. So the judgment was declaratory. And I think it's on the basis of that that the PDP quickly moved and named persons that they consider could represent them, in this particular instance. Now, Dave Umahi and his deputy and all of that, under Section 25 subsection 2 of the Court of Appeal Act, they have 90 days within which to appeal. And I find it very odd that Governor Umahi, is he a lawyer or an engineer?
He's an engineer.
He's an engineer, okay. Yeah, but his counsel must advise him that what he did on television, attacking the judge, is called contempt ex facie curia. I'm not sure he has read the contempt, but the judgment, but these politicians, they quote sections of the law because they have been in and out of courts, having election cases. These are bathroom lawyers. But what he said about the ruling was contemptuous. He was questioning the integrity of the judge. He was questioning, the grounds of the judgment that I imagine that he has not read. He cannot do that. And I hope that his lordship, Justice Ekwo, will charge him for contempt, ex facie curia. Okay? The only recourse that is available to him is under Section 25, subsection 2 of the Court of Appeal Act. He can go on appeal. Now, on that appeal, That's where the legal matter will start. And we're not here to offer an opinion on what the outcome will be. But I've seen an opinion submitted by Mike Uzekome, SAN, on the matter. Well, it's an informed opinion, but okay, as the learned SAN, has he read the judgment? Because I read his very robust response. Okay, can Michael Uzekome, SAN, who is my very good brother and friend and all of that, can he also say that he's not pursuing self-interest in this matter? Because it's counsel in another matter, related matter, in Zamfara, where he's representing the governor of Zamfara state. Because what will happen here, it will be a ripple effect. And many of the issues raised with regard to immunity, Section 308, which Dave Umahi was also quoting. Okay, all this, and the principle of stare decisis, precedents that the learned SAN pointed out. These are issues that can be contested in court. So no individual can act as an appeal court on this matter when it will appear that they have their own personal interest. I would like to see a situation whereby, yes, David Umahi, his deputy, and the other members of the House of Assembly go on appeal. It's good for our constitutional order. And I think that the matter can be laid to rest once and for all. No lawyer, no single lawyer has a final opinion on this matter.
Well, of course not.
And it still goes back to the judge in the end. And that'll be the decision.
Why you bother to read certain things is beyond me.
Okay. I've spoken so much. But we'll take a short break.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotis Sidiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotis.
Morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, so we begin with aviation fuel. Apparently, some flights in Nigeria have been grounded due to scarcity in aviation fuel. And some of them were cancelled yesterday. Passengers were stranded, and that's because aviation fuel is now at about $5.90. If you consider the fact that it's January 2021, it was about 190 naira per liter. That's about a 215% hike. Aviation fuel is, a derivative of crude. We've seen what's been going on with crude oil prices rising, and it's causing serious problems. This is just a week or two after domestic airlines were called out by the FCCPC for colluding to increase airfare because their costs were rising. So that was when diesel was about $4.50, and now it's $5.90. The chief operating officer of Ibom Air was quoted by this. They're saying that there's a crisis going on. So something has to be done. Either they raise their prices further or they get some kind of assistance, because at some point these flights are not going to be able to take off the ground. We quickly divert to Kenya, still on the fuel situation. If you look at this headline from Business Daily, which is a publication in Kenya, they had a headline that said that, I think we should have that headline, not the fuel stations. But anyway, the headline says that Russia-Ukraine conflict ruins Kenya's fuel subsidy. They've been subsidizing fuel for a few months now. The payment that they were going to make to their oil marketers, I think the last payment was at $84 a barrel. I think the next one for this month of March is supposed to be, or April, is supposed to be $92 a barrel. But with fuel costs at $1.32 or so, that's essentially blowing up what it is that they are trying to pay to oil marketers. So it's going to impact them as well. So if they're saying that this is ruining Kenya's fuel subsidy, you can imagine what it's doing to us here in Nigeria. Pure water, sachet water in Nigeria, prices, pre-pandemic prices up about 300%. 5 naira a sachet to over 20. Number of reasons. You're looking at the plastics, which not all are produced here, cost of production. You've also got the trucks that move the water around. I think it's they also run on diesel as well. So you can actually put that diesel matter, you can factor that into what's going on with sachet water in Nigeria. And so that's also driving, of course. You can see how fuel just pretty much filters its way through to a number of other commodities. What else is going on? Airtel Africa is paying off senior unsecured notes. It's unsecured debts that they're paying off a year ahead of time. about $500 million worth of that debt. They are saying they will save about $26 billion $26 million in finance costs by paying this off ahead of time. Kind of worried that interest rates might be rising early. It also gives a good indication to shareholders that the company can generate cash. Now, on the flip side, shareholders might say, well, should you be using cash to pay off debt now, or should you be using it to invest in capital expenditure with what's been going on with 5G and the likes? Also, there are a couple metrics, enterprise value, price to earnings ratio, that are impacted by your debt falling. But on the whole, it's good for Airtel to be making that payment off, because it does gives off strong signals to shareholders. And then finally, in South Africa, 2021 GDP figures came out yesterday. They grew at 4.9%, in line with estimates. I think this is the fastest rate of growth in about 14 years in South Africa. So for 2021, when you look at Nigeria's GDP growth of 3.4%, South Africa 4.9%, it just shows that 2021 was a year of recovery for a number of nations across the world.
Well, good for them. But I want to talk about the economic implications if our aviation industry is grounded.
Right.
It will be a complete disaster, won't it? Especially with the struggles after the impact of the pandemic on this industry. What can really be done? Because I was looking at a press release from one of the airlines talking about how they're unable to fly and have no short-term plan. They have no idea of how long the situation will persist. So we're actually looking at a crisis in that industry.
Yes, as the IBOM Air executive said, they have to raise prices. I mean, it's a cost metric. That's an input into how they move. I think it's like taxis. If the fuel prices rise, and you want to hail a taxi or use ride-hailing. Remember I talked about Uber and Bolt a couple of weeks ago raising their prices during that whole fuel scarcity issue with the poisoned fuel. That's what has to happen. So prices have to go up. If not, we're back to serious prices.
It seems to me that the inflationary pressure that we are all facing is inevitable. Okay, part of it is force majeure. Part of it is the cumulative effect of how the economy has not been properly managed. Now, first we had COVID. COVID brought its own inflationary pressure. Second, we had we have this war in Ukraine and the effect on the cost of fuel, of the spot price of crude oil. Okay, that in itself is having its effect. We don't know where it will end. But before all of this happened, the Ukrainian war, the crisis elsewhere, with the dollar particularly, with the foreign exchange, Nigeria's economy, the economy even in Kenya, these economies were not doing well. What happened was that latest developments complicated the situation further, and it could get worse. You have cited the example of how international crisis has destroyed fuel subsidy in Kenya. Has it not had the same effect in Nigeria? That's had the same effect. We have a budget that is likely to just turn up and down, with the managers of the national economy not knowing what to do. Pure water, which you refer to, sachet water, as it's otherwise called, Water Producers Association of Nigeria, they are saying that they have issues with the raw materials that they use, with the production materials that they use. What are the production materials that they use? Yes, you can, if you want to set up a water factory, yes, you can dig borehole, do water treatment plant, make sure it's fine. But the machines you have to import. The chemical materials for treating, you have to import. Sometimes the expertise you also have to import, although there is local expertise that is growing in that direction. And so, such a water that Tudun does not drink.
Neither do I.
I imagine that you two do not drink.
Do not, no.
Used to be 10 naira, used to be 5 naira. Now it is 20 naira. Yeah. About 100% increment under the difference, the current dispensation. Now, the Water Providers Association of Nigeria, Producers Association of Nigeria, they are even saying that it will get worse. Right. That a point will come when we would, buy water, sachet water for 50 naira. Okay, some of us have staff around us who drink bottled water. Okay, yes. Even bottled water has gone up.
Oh, that's correct.
And I've told some of the people around me, you people will start drinking sachet water. Because the way you people are drinking big men's water is frightening because things are going up. Okay, so what crisis do we have? a water crisis. Access to potable water. It's not as if the state itself can provide potable water. The public water system is not working. So even the small one that poor people have created for themselves, even in terms of quality, such a water is what all of us here will run away from, because we don't know how it was produced. We don't know whether the Standards Organization of Nigeria is focusing on it. Now the poor man can no longer drink water. That is how bad it is. And it's not just such a water. Somebody is looking at me in the studio. That's what he drinks. I'm not trying to frighten you. I'm just telling you the truth.
Right.
So transportation is a problem. People cannot have access to fuel. Even landlords are saying that the water that they use to construct their buildings, the cost of the water has gone up. That's a fixed building. So the poor in this situation is suffering. The question is, I hope that's the question that economists can handle. How do we, in the face of this global deprivation, because it's global, how can we protect the bottom billion,
pyramid, yeah,
the poor people who are at a gross disadvantage and who bear the brunt of the failures from the governance side and from the global economic side?
And might we also add that while we have inflationary pressures, while the cost of everything is going up, cost of wages are not going up in Nigeria. In fact, they're dipping. In fact, what you used to get for a certain role has been reduced now. And Philip's curve is already applying in Nigeria. Because the truth has to be said, there are too many people scampering for those little roles. And obviously, the cost of wage will drop. So I don't know how we're going to go around all of this. Inflation is still at a scary level high. Over 15%. With the Russian-Ukraine crisis, you're still going to have more inflationary pressures this year. Food inflation takes a core part of all of that.
It's a huge part of the basket, yeah.
Right, over 15%.
Yeah,
and
huge.
Other inflationary pressures, airline, we're talking about aviation fuel going up over 215%. Some airlines couldn't fly yesterday. So cost of transportation has increased. You can't even get, some people are still buying fuel for 220 naira per liter. That's another inflation.
Yeah.
You don't even want to travel on the road. Like if you want to go from Lagos to Abuja, you don't want to try it with your car because you're scared of what might happen on the road.
I just remembered something. I was walking just down Awolowo Road here, and a car guy was getting his tire pumped by a vulcanizer, right? And he asked him for the cost. He said 200 naira. He lost his mind.
And it's gone up in price. So
200 naira.
Everything is.
He just started screaming like he was stealing something from him.
Everything is going up in price, and you don't have wage to cushion the effects. That's where leadership must come in strong. Leadership must come in strong, and these pressures will be heightened.
Well, you guys are still very active in this business. I know the prices of certain things that have gone up too. That, I will not be allowed to say on television.
We have to move.
Yes, the economics. That's economics.
Why are you looking at me like that?
We have to move.
Okay, Lotus knows where I'm going.
I do.
I will say that.